So here we are, the stage. It's a place of lies and deceit and dissembling, full of people whose grand conceits bring ruin and despair to all around them. You don't get enough Shakespeare on stage these days, do we? So we have politics instead. And I guess one or two of you, many of you, will be thinking we've possibly had slightly too much Shakespeare in our politics already, the selection. However, I hope with your indulgence, going to introduce a little more, because it does strike me that all the political people here, the politicians and the political hopefuls, do share some traits with many of the better-known Shakespearean characters. And I could say tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps at this petty pace from day to day, and that, of course, is Hamlet and the Labour Party, and Jacinda Ardern immediately to my left. Hamlet and the Labour Party. It does seem possibly a fit there. Of course, that would mean that if Hamlet was the Labour Party, we'd be Ophelia. Yeah. Then, of course, the other thing about the Labour Party is that they did have their launch on Sunday. I was there. The whole of the Viaduct Event Centre filled in a kind of red mist. There was a moment when you thought, am I sitting in the Red Wedding? Is that going to happen? It did not. Paul Goldsmith representing National. National, of course, is Lear. That's pretty obvious. Doggedly convinced of their own rightness all the way down the line. And if National is Lear, we're Cordelia, loving our father right to the end. Richard Leckinger, Richard Leckinger for the Greens. You do think of Bottom, don't you? Lost in a dream, gallivanting through the woods. Donkey for a donkey head, surrounded by fairy dust. Maybe the Greens are more than that, Richard's going to tell us. We are, as you heard before, going to hear from Anne Kendall when she arrives from the Māori Party. The Māori Party, those loyal servants and retainers of National. I think again of perhaps in Merchant of Venice, not Shylock, but Shylock's daughter, Jessica, innocent and pure, wholly admirable and bereft. And then there's the Internet Party. Chris Young will be representing them, and when I think who might be in Shakespeare represented, or who comes to mind in Shakespeare from the Internet Party, well, it's Falstaff, obviously. We're going to hear from each of the people on my left for 10 minutes at a time. It is the first duty of politics, in my view, as it is the first duty of the arts, to be entertaining. We'll listen to them if they continue to entertain us, and therefore the dry rules that applied in Helensville last night will not apply here. I've told them already. I'm quite happy with light-hearted banter, and I'm quite happy with that from the floor. If you get into hysterical ranting, I will swear at you.
Does that include us?
It does include you, yes. I was also thinking that we would ban anybody who tried to explain their policies through interpretive dance. But then, on the bus in this morning, I had second thoughts about that. I'd like to see you do that, Paul. However, whether he does, whether he doesn't, will be up to him. We're going to hear from Paul first, and then Jacinda, and then Richard, and then we're going across to Chris at the end. And when Anne comes, we'll let her find her feet and then give her a chance to speak as well. There will be lots of time for questions. I have a few, but I'm guessing that a lot of you have your own questions. This is a particularly erudite and knowledgeable audience, of course, full of people who know a lot about the arts. It's a very broad field, all the way from that interpretive dance to copyright law. You'd think it was a simple topic, but, well, you wouldn't think it was a simple topic. Everybody knows this is an extremely complex area of political decision-making. So you will get your chances to ask your questions. Right, kicking off, Paul Goldsmith.
Well, thank you very much. Now, I think I should stand. I feel like I should stand. Thank you for having us here, and it's a great privilege to be here representing Chris Finlayson, who's unfortunately giving a speech down in Wellington today, so he does send his best wishes to you all. Thanks to Susan Jordan and the dance people for hosting it. I've got 3 daughters who are mad keen on dancing. Actually, the youngest is at kindergarten in Remuera, and we came home one day and the teacher said, your daughter has a special talent. And we thought, oh, well, this is good. Maybe she's speaking Mandarin well, or she's very good at mathematics, and it turned out it was the ribbon dancing. She is the absolute expert ribbon dancer at Remuera Kindergarten. So maybe there's an opportunity for that further down the line. I just wanted to say a couple of broader things about before going into the specifics of arts. And the simple message is that arts do well when the economy as a whole is doing well, and when people have money in their pocket, when they have a job, they're more likely to want to go out and buy a ticket to the theatre, or go to see a play, or to buy a book, or any aspects of the arts. And so I'm very proud to be part of a government that's doing very well economically, and economic growth is strong. Unemployment's down 5.6% and heading down. Australia at 6.4 going up. And that's a context which is great for New Zealand generally. And so, and the basis of that, it's worth reminding ourselves that it's 6 years of strong, stable, predictable, economically sustainable government leads to confidence, business confidence, consumer confidence. Confidence leads to investment, and investment leads to jobs. That's how it works. There's no sort of miracle, there's no luck to it. It's about getting stability, confidence, investment and jobs. And so I'm very keen to be able to continue that for another 3 years or 6 years under John Key and the National Government. And in that environment, the arts sector, like every other sector, will be able to flourish. The second thing I think it's worth saying is that the arts is, as Simon said, very broad. So many people are involved. I mean, my living for 10 years was as a writer, and a lot of people involved in the arts are effectively small businesses, and they're people who are trying to make a living, trying to deal with paying provisional tax and GST. I was meeting with Kevin Chapman and the writers group and the We Create areas, showing that the writing industry, or the publishing industry, is worth about $300 or $400 million to New Zealand, and growing strong, employing about 3,000 people, lots of small businesses. And so how governments enable and create an environment in where those small businesses can do well is very important. And so when we look at the ability to grow a business over your lifetime and not pay a capital gains tax at the end of it, that's a good thing. To be able to have the freedom to employ people on a 90-day period, and not, when you're a small business and you're not trapped, you've got flexibility to cope with unexpected things, that's very, very important. And so all these little issues add up to a story which enables the arts sector, like every other sector in the economy, to do well. So that's the general context. In terms of specifics, what are we going to do in the arts area? Well, the first thing we won't be doing is we won't be repealing the Hobbit laws, which have been very important to the government, to the sector in the film industry. So we've had the New Zealand branch of an Aussie union trying to stop productions or create difficulties in New Zealand, holding a gun to the head of the producers. And it's good to see we've got some disagreement there. But the Hobbit, let's not forget, has created an estimated 3,000 jobs in New Zealand. It's boosted tourism. It's pumped millions of dollars in additional spending into the wider New Zealand economy. And some of our opponents, didn't want it. And so you can talk the talk about supporting the screen industry, but when it comes down to it, this is a government that's been prepared to do what's necessary to hold that in New Zealand. And so when we're generally, I'm not generally in favour of subsidies of any sort to any particular part of the economy. But internationally, we've seen the film industry has sort of shaped or grown into a shape where that is the kind of the international standard. And so we're left with a little choice if we want to have a good film industry to have a situation such as we have with the 20% rebate, and making sure that Film New Zealand and the Film Commission keep New Zealand industry competitive. And so we've shown that we are a pragmatic government. We are prepared to make deals to make sure that New Zealand continues to be a place where the film industry prospers and does well and employs a lot of people. And so, we're very proud of that record, and we don't want to put that at risk. We're seeing foreign investment coming through right across that sector, and long may it continue. We've announced the Avatar sequels going on in Wellington, and I'm sure that a lot of people in this room through one way or other will be supported by that. Another area that we'll continue to carry on with is that particular thing that Chris Finlayson's enthusiastic about is the Sistema work, which has been the program for the children in Sistema Aotearoa performing, and we saw some of them on TVNZ's Sunday program last on the weekend, and that's in conjunction with the APO, which is a fantastic orchestra in New Zealand, in Auckland, which has through that latest orchestral review been raised to metropolitan standard. Well, you know, we've gone through 6 years where the New Zealand economy, every budget in the last 3 or 4 years has had virtually no new money, apart from money going into the health and education sector. But we've managed to maintain and increase funding into the APO through Creative New Zealand and other areas. I'm sure it's not as much as everybody would like, perhaps, but it's still going in the right direction, and that shows that you know, we very much value the arts sector in the broadest sense of the word. You know, the National Party caucus, I've got 59. There's 59 of us. We're a very broad church from all sorts of backgrounds. One thing is that we do agree on our leader, and we all support him, and we're unified, and that's very important. And it's very important for a country to know that there's stable, united, and coherent leadership. And maybe that will continue for a long time. But there is a very wide diversity of views. So I come from, I spent my life writing books and made a living out of that. And so that's my background as a historian and a biographer. We've got policemen, teachers, businessmen, wine growers, people from all sorts of backgrounds of life. And I think it's a collective wisdom you get from a wide range of people that helps contribute to a party which is basically pragmatic and sensible about supporting the arts and making sure that we've got a good environment for the arts to flourish. Te Papa North is another one I just wanted to mention that you know, we often worry in Auckland that perhaps too much of the arts funding generally is concentrated in Wellington. Well, you know, we're very, very keen to make sure that Auckland, which ultimately is New Zealand's leading city, has to be the jewel in the crown of New Zealand in terms of the arts area, making sure that we're well supported. I'm very proud to have been part of the Auckland Council earlier on that invested in the upgrade of the Auckland Art Gallery, and has helped raise that up into what I think is a fantastic thing for Auckland City and for New Zealand generally. And we need to be able to continue that investment. I just want to say one thing. You know, the arts sector generally should be the most critical of council waste in spending, because the thing that I hear most going around Epsom and many places in Auckland is people are desperately worried about the rates going up every year. They're absolutely colossal in my part of town. And if you want to continue to have good investment out of Auckland Council in the arts sector, you want to make sure that they're not wasting their money on all sorts of other things which are not core council business. I think having a good arts infrastructure in place is a critical thing, that is one of the most important things that councils should be doing, and doing well. But they can't do it if they're wasting endless sums on things that they don't need to be focused on, particularly on things that central government does already, such as particularly in the welfare and social areas. The other thing, so Te Papa North is going to be great. It's an opportunity where we're investing a lot of money to have an outpost of Te Papa, and it's also helps secure the collections but creates more access to them. Another thing I'll just mention, obviously, over the next few years, how am I going on time?
You've got a couple of minutes.
Over the next few years, obviously, there will be a huge focus in the arts sector, arts and culture sector, on the commemorations of the First World War, and you know, we've put a lot of investment into particularly the national commemorative area down in Wellington, but throughout the region there are a lot of little projects going on commemorating that very important event in the life of the country. And I'll mention also earthquake and heritage, because you know, that's, in Parliament I've had 3 years. This is the end of my first term. As a backbencher, you get stuck on a couple of select committees, and so I chair the Finance Committee, and I'm also on Local Government and Environment. And Local Government and Environment, we've heard a lot of debate recently around the earthquake strengthening legislation. And as a result of Christchurch, we had a Royal Commission, and they recommended some pretty tough rules around earthquake strengthening. And so we're really having to grapple with very difficult issues there about, well, okay, in the perfect world, you strengthen every old building, But the reality is that may mean that most of them might end up having to be demolished because people can't afford it, and there's no economic basis for doing that. And so trying to come up with a pattern that works well so we can retain the wonderful heritage that we have down Ponsonby Road and through Newmarket and all throughout Auckland is a very important challenge for us, and so we're grappling with that. And I think that will be very much an important issue over the next couple of years, trying to land in a reasonable spot there. So I think that touches on most of the things. Improved governance, just finally in the Arts Council area, has been one of the achievements of the last 3 years. Trying to get, rather than 4 committees, 1 overall committee. Now, you can have your arguments about how that works, but I think in terms of having a simple, coherent structure around that organisation, I think that will put us in good stead over the next 3 years. So looking forward to lots of questions, hopefully none too tricky, but the broader sense is that within the National Caucus you have a lot of people very interested and committed to the arts generally. We want the sector to flourish. There's this nonsense talk that New Zealand is all about milk and logs. That's rubbish. One of the fastest growing areas of exports is the services part of the economy, and the creative sector is an essential part of the services economy. Not just writers and artists and sculptors and things like that, but also advertising and film and that broader sense of the word. And so if the New Zealand economy is doing well and we've got a climate where people have the confidence to make investment and bring in people and employ people and to grow their businesses, then that is a climate where you as a sector can continue to do well, and then people will be prosperous enough to be able to pay the resources and support the ongoing support of the facilities that we have in this great city, and we can do well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul Goldsmith from the National Party. Our second speaker is Jacinda Ardern from the Labour Party.
Thank you, Simon. Kia ora koutou, and thank you first of all to Q Theatre for hosting us here today, and to Dan's for putting on what I think is a really critical discussion for us to be having probably any time of year, but especially I guess at election time. Simon's right, it is really hard to cover all of the different elements of the creative sector in one 10-minute address. So I guess what I'm going to try and do today is to cover some broad themes that I think probably are relevant to a range of different areas, but also I've got copies of Labour's Arts, Culture and Heritage Policy, so forgive me if I don't cover your area of interest. Please feel free to ask a question or to take away our policy or come and see me afterwards. I want to unusually start, though, by giving some credit to Chris Finlayson. And that's for the fact that over the past 6 years, I do believe that things could have been much worse for the creative sector. I believe that he probably, within his caucus, in fact, I believe, based on Paul's address, that there is no doubt in my mind he has had to defend funding within his caucus for the arts sector. And so I'm pleased at least that we haven't seen large-scale cutbacks in most areas, but that, in my mind, doesn't represent progress. Staying still doesn't mean we've made the most of some of the opportunities that we could have made. It means we haven't seen some of the growth that I believe we could have seen in the creative sector in the past 6 years. And I don't believe that the superb success of a few individual New Zealanders on the world stage, as much pride as it gives us, cannot be used to frame the creative sector as being in the golden age. But that doesn't mean we can't be in the golden age. I do think it means we need to look at the creative sector through a different lens. The Labour Party has always acknowledged as a given the role that the sector plays in our national identity, in our sense of self, the importance, a role it plays at a cultural level. That's why Helen Clark in 1999 took on the role as being the Minister of Arts, Culture and Heritage. But that is a given for us. I believe now we're at a point where we need to start entrenching the value of the arts as an economic powerhouse so that it is not treated as a nice to have, which I believe it is currently. Paul, I would have to challenge you on this notion that simply by making sure the economy is thriving, that's when how we can ensure that the arts do well. Why can't the economy do well when the arts do well? They are a contributor to our economy just as much as any other sector. But that is not a given at the moment. The fact, for instance, that our regional economic development plans in New Zealand do not incorporate arts, culture and heritage within them. The fact that within local government legislation, as much as you've said, Paul, that local government should be making sure it spends its money wisely so it can invest wisely in the arts, the national government removed any requirement for council to consider arts, culture and heritage within their core legislation. The four well-beings removed the arts from that legislation. Auckland might...
That at some
point. Well, I'll be happy to see the repeal given your new position on it. We must entrench that once again. But I think it's good that it's been demonstrated through the fine work of We Create, the PwC report, the value that the sector adds to our economy, 30,000 jobs, $3.6 billion. So let's start incorporating that into some of our regional and our national economic development plans. I think it's important to keep in mind, though, that We Create came off the back of one of the critical issues that faces a large part of the creative sector, and that is the issue of copyright. I wanted to be proactive and raise it and be really, really clear that copyright is one of those issues that has bounced around politically. The last time there was really any significant substantive change to Copyright Act was really 2008, with amendments made in 2010. The national government said that they would review copyright legislation in 2013. That hasn't happened. We have said that we will do a review, but before we change any legislation, we must look at the nature of copyright, how it's being handled now, and the impact it's having. But our first principle of that review is that the role of intellectual property law for our creative sector to gain fair return and protect their rights against unlawful use is a bottom line. And it must be a bottom line. And I absolutely commit to that.
You're going to rule out having DotCom supporting you.
I'm ensuring that there's income for our creative sector to survive. That's what it's got nothing in my mind to do with .com. This is Labour Party policy. I'd be interested to hear your views on copyright, Paul. We have said that we'd have an eminent individual undertake the review. That eminent individual will be required to liaise and work closely with the creative sector to ensure that their view is articulated clearly within that first principled review. If I were to look to a big second issue that I think captures everyone, it's the fact that I think we've really neglected career pathways and development of the career workforce in the arts and creative sector. We've completely ignored it. You know, you've seen all of this focus on transitions between education and work in almost every other sector except this one, and we think that we need to review that entirely. The way that we want to do that, first of all, we think that actually we should make sure that we have the training places in place to be able to ensure we have trained individuals going into the sector where there are gaps. A perfect example is that we do have growth within our gaming, our interactive production industry, gaming, animation, and so on, and yet TEC has placed a cap on how many individuals are being trained in that space. Perfect example of where we need to make sure that we have a proper sector review to ensure that we are keeping pace. But equally, why, for instance, do we not have apprenticeships in the creative sector? We have internships, sure, but there is no real structure to allow on-the-job training towards a qualification whilst working. We have it in almost every other sector, and it's time we established it here. We've said that we would commit $3.25 million and create 200 creative apprenticeships to do that very thing. We'd envisage them working across theatre, dance, in our galleries, our museums, and work alongside the sector to put the bones around which would be the most appropriate industry training organisation to help manage that. Where would we best facilitate making sure that those are entering those apprenticeships are able to gather information about them? How do we best fund it? Are we in part funding some of both salary and the support, or just the ITO support? We want to develop all of that detail with the sector, but what we have committed to is that we believe it's time to have those apprenticeships in place. Thirdly, we're going to bring back PACE, Pathways to Arts and Cultural Employment. We've always believed that we've done quite a good job of, through our tertiary institutions, training fantastic graduates who are skilled in their craft. But so many of our artists need more than that to survive now. They are, many of them, small businesses. And giving them the tools to enable them to make a career out of those talents is something that's missing within both the work and income, but generally within the sector. So we will bring back PACE, and we'll make sure that we model it again over those most successful programs, the likes of Dunedin and Depot over on the North Shore, for instance. We're also going to bring back artisan schools. We loved artisan schools. It was a great program. It showed our young people what was possible within the sector. It added something to curriculum. Unfortunately, since that time, our curriculum has narrowed significantly. I would say that's the case for the way we view tertiary education as well, but that's a whole other story. So those are some of the things that we want to do in the careers space. Really want to quickly skim over arts funding, because again, that cuts across a broad range of areas within the sector. I think it's a simplification to say that the sector simply wants more money. I think that really oversimplifies a lot of the issues that are often raised with me. I think when you look specifically at something like, for instance, Creative New Zealand funding, what I have raised often are things like, can we make sure that it's practitioner-led? Can we simplify the process? Can we make sure that we fund high-quality projects, not high-quality funding applications? And the answer is yes, we can. So we are going to make sure that we review the entire funding process for Creative New Zealand. I'm going to mention as well, we want independent top-level representation for our Māori and Pacifica arts. We feel like that's been diluted in recent times. We're going to make sure there's adequate funding for creative communities schemes in partnership with local council, not without them. There is so much I could say on film and music. Maybe I'll leave that for questions. I do want to say, though, Paul, everyone wanted The Hobbit to be here. Everyone wanted The Hobbit here. Our simple argument was we created Lord of the Rings under our old employment laws. There was no reason why we couldn't continue to have contractors operating independently as contractors within the sector under our current laws. Our argument was that you got duped. That was our argument. But we can come back to that. And finally, we will bring back a public broadcaster in New Zealand, and we think that's an important part of supporting telling our stories through screen. We want to secure New Zealand Book Month. It has been bypassed. We want a pan-literary group. There's so much to say. It's in our arts policy, but I look forward to a golden age of the arts once again.
Now we're going to hear from Richard Leckinger from the Green Party.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. So wonderful to see you all here today. And thank you so much to Q Theatre, to Dans, to Susan, to Simon, to everyone else who's involved. And particular thanks to all you people hiding in the background who made this thing happen. You know, lights, sound, camera folk, the ones we never take a bow. It's great to be here. Like everyone in New Zealand, I love this place. I've been here 22 years. And the Green Party is ready to deliver in government on environmental issues, on a fairer society, and on a smarter economy. Those are our top line messages for the election. We're stable, proven, modern party. We've been around. We're ready for government. So that's why we're out here asking for your party vote. It's time. God, I haven't found my light. It's really bothering me. I am actually a professional actor, and this is killing me. Where's my light?
Richard, do you want to use the main...
I'm going over to the mic.
I bet there's a mic up here. Yes.
I'm ready for my close-up now. I'm ready. God, it's funny. Old habits, eh?
Sing out, Louise.
That's it. That's it. You know, one of the things I love about New Zealand is our creative sector. And the reason I love it is because I've been part of it for the whole 22 years I've lived here in New Zealand. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I've made a living doing it for probably half that time. And it's glorious. It's glorious. But I'm not here to talk about that, my career. I'm here to kind of try and distill an arts, culture, and heritage policy into 10 minutes, which, as Jacinda said, is a very hard thing to do. We've done a lot of research over the last year in this particular area as a party, and kind of the clear message from you in that research, in all the questionnaires we've done, I think we got 1,300 responses to our questionnaires. The clear message, the top line issues were resources, recognition, and reach. The 3 R's for the arts community. And so I'm going to use those as kind of a way to hang a bunch of our policy topics off, because of course a number of our policies are not dissimilar from other parties, so I don't have to repeat a lot of it. In the resources area, and actually a lot of our policies touch on all 3 or 2 of those areas at a time. Resources. It's not just about the money, but in real terms, arts funding hasn't gone very far in the last 6 years. I do want to rebut the notion that we're in, well, yeah, we're in a golden age of arts, but that actually economic growth is lifting all boats, and that's why we should have a thriving arts community, because it's just not true. Economic growth of the last 6 years has been raising the boats of the top 10%. Most of our audience lives in the 90% who have seen no real increase in wages, many of whom are precariously poised from paycheck to paycheck, like many of us in the arts community. And if they don't have the money, they're not coming to your gig. The growth just isn't going to be there. And yes, arts do thrive even when the economy's doing poorly. Why? Because there's this huge yearning to express ourselves. It's going to happen. But whether it happens in a meaningful economic and jobs way is another matter. And I'm not convinced that it is happening as well as it could or should. So resourcing is very important. In terms of resourcing, one of our key policy planks is to get all the various organizations talking to each other. It doesn't mean we put them all together. I'm not suggesting that. Talking to each other so that we can streamline funding. I think Jacinda, whatever your line was that got the laugh, was the perfect summation of this problem. You need a PhD in grants before you need a PhD in whatever your personal craft is. Because you have to cobble together funding from different sources who have different criteria. And oh my God, it's a nightmare. And then of course you end up 30% short of your budget and the whole project falls through, and you've invested months or years of your life chasing funding for a creative project that's not going to happen. And it's heartbreaking. There are ways to streamline that. There are ways to make things more coherent. And we'll work with whatever party wants to do to make that happen. We don't have to throw all the funding into one bucket. That's not what we're saying. Not at all, because then we'll lose our diversity. The other thing is, it needs to be participant-led. The people who are using the money need to have a say in how the funding criteria are set, how the resources are divided, because they're finite. And the arts sector needs to do that. It doesn't need to come from a government bureaucracy. I'm really, really thrilled that Paul Goldsmith said that arts and culture is a core function of local government. That's really exciting. I think we should hold the National Party to that when they're in opposition in 8 weeks. Okay? Because they'll vote against increased funding for arts and culture. And of course, we need to hold them to this. It is a core function. And yes, the 4 means were pulled out of the Local Government Act and discarded. They need to go back in. And because it's not just about arts and culture, it's about a number of all 4 well-beings. In the recognition line, I believe in our culture right now, an arts career, pretty much any type, a creative career, is looked down on as a nice to have. And it's codified in the way WINS deals with you when you walk in the door as an artist. And you say, oh, well, what do you do? Well, I'm an artist.
And they say, oh, well, that's nice. And they pat you on the head and they say, why don't you get a real job while you go hone your craft as a hobby? And that's the response. And that's kind of the ethos in New Zealand. And we need to change that. It's got to be seen as a legitimate career. And that starts right in the schools. You know, hear for artists in schools. You know, the Green Party is not just about enviro schools, we're about artists in schools as well. It's about a rich diversity of things. So we would restore PACE, or something equivalent, so that people who find themselves unemployed can have a pathway back into the creative sector and aren't forced in other directions where their heart just doesn't belong. In terms of recognition and reach, we would develop a portion of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade whose job it was to promote New Zealand creative arts of all flavors overseas. It's wonderful, thank you, it's wonderful that Creative New Zealand funded that huge trip to both Glasgow and Edinburgh. That's great. But why was it Creative New Zealand who was doing that? MFAT's out there pimping us as an oil drilling destination, pimping milk powder, which is great, that's fine.
Make a living somehow.
No, that's fine. But they should also be out there selling some things that are very, very unique to New Zealand, and that's our creative arts. I mean, that's ours.
What do we do at Frankfurt?
What's that?
What do we do at Frankfurt Art Fair? Book fair, book fair.
Yeah, but at any rate, getting MFAT involved is a way to improve the reach of our artists. You know, we've already heard mentioned broadcasting. Yes, public broadcaster, very important. We would bring back TVNZ7. It's a way for artists to have reach. And more than just the highbrow arts, nothing wrong with the highbrow arts, but more than just the highbrow arts need to get into our living rooms. You know? There's a lot more happening out there that New Zealanders could really enjoy that's not accessible necessarily. One thing we would do, and I'll just touch on this briefly, is we would stop the TPPA. The reason being is it is the greatest threat to copyright law in New Zealand. It's why National's dragging their feet on this. We've had ad hoc copyright legislation over the last few years, and we've kind of dragged ourselves into the 20th century, and we need to drag ourselves into the 21st century. And it needs to be our law, a sovereign law, not something dictated by overseas interests. And coming back to the recognition idea, I just do want to speak on the Hobbit Law briefly. The Hobbit Law is perfectly indicative of the way we think about our creative arts sector, at least this government thinks about it. And that is, they were willing to treat human creatives as a commodity that they could discount for a foreign corporation to get some business. Yes. And that really is demeaning. That's really demeaning of what we do for a living. And that's got to change. Everybody wanted the Hobbit here. To repeat Jacinda, everybody wanted the Hobbit here. And it was great. But did we really need to discount ourselves, to cheapen ourselves? The truth is we didn't. It was totally unnecessary. And you know, we've done the same thing with our gambling laws. You know, in the Sky City Casino, we've done a lot of this where we just cut deals. But we diminish ourselves in the process. We diminish our sovereignty. We would turn that stuff around. I've talked about arts advisors and education. Oh yeah, and back to copyright, and this is recognition. We would reserve rights, copyrights for artists, not the people who commission their work. Because very often artists lose control of what they've built because somebody else paid for it initially. Can't have it. In terms of the literary sector, we would restore the economic viability of the Public Lending Rights Fund. And we would seriously look at, and this would have to be in conjunction with the sector. If the sector wanted it, we would extend that to education lending rights, because there's an entire body of libraries out there that aren't paying authors for use of their books. The public libraries are, but the educational institutions aren't. And if that sector is keen and they agree with what we come up with, it's there. It would be extended. Right now, it's not economically viable. The PLR, it's been underfunded, and it's kind of bereft. Sean, am I done?
Just about.
Just about. Very good. I'll just shout out to great initiatives like ETNZ is now building a whole ITO thing. You know, these are just sectors that I'm aware of. There are a lot of cool things happening in the arts. People don't understand that, and this is a dance statistic that I'm going to get wrong, the number of people involved in dance in New Zealand is bigger than most of the sports in our country. And yet, we don't treat it with the same respect. So my call to you is to give your party vote to the Greens, take your other votes, your constituent vote to whichever party you like, but give your party vote to the Greens, and we will change the government and give you good, stable government. Kia ora.
Richard Leckinger from the Greens. Can I just ask if Anne Kendall from the Māori Party has arrived? Okay. Right. Chris Yong from the Internet Party is our next speaker.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. I guess I feel like the odd one out because I'm the kind of representative from the upstart party here compared to everyone else. But look, here's the one thing that you can know about what the Internet Party is about. We do like to take an evidence-based approach when it comes to dealing with our policies. Now, also, unlike the rest of our fellow speakers here, we don't have a formal policy sorted. And the reason for that is because we've got draft ideas that are up on our website right now. We've got some ideas that are up for discussion. The way that we work is we get our members to look at it, give us feedback. I would like you guys, as the wider community, as the leaders in your community, in your respective arts, take a look at it as well and give us feedback, because if anyone knows really what needs to happen to help your respective arts sector, you guys would know that. I'm not here to try and tell you what you should do. Our party acts as a facilitator because you guys are the experts. So, I'd also like to add, we're a fairly new party. I've been a candidate for about 7 weeks, so I'm going to just, I know, thrown in the deep end with, these amazing debates. So what I do want to do is I just want to share some ideas that we've thought up and, let me know what you think, and if you want to take the discussion further, then definitely you can hop on our website and take it further. So before I do that though, I want to share a story with you. Now, the arts may change, the situation may change, but hopefully the experience and what you get out of it will relate to some of you. So, there was once a 12-year-old boy that was inspired by his skateboarding mate to learn guitar. He, throughout high school took guitar lessons, practiced every day, joined the school jazz band, took part in, the productions, and also high school talent quests and the Smoke Free Rock Quest. He later joined a band that got signed to a record label, began recording songs, filming music videos with the support of NZ On Air. It was wonderful, but also a very weird experience for him to hear himself on the radio for the first time. He then got to visit places all over New Zealand he'd never been to before. Play shows including events put on by local councils, lunchtime shows at schools, and playing Big Day Out for the first time was very exciting for him as well. His band later released the debut album, which went on to sell double platinum. He got to play shows in Australia and also for the New Zealand troops that were stationed over in East Timor at the time. Travelling in a loud droning Hercules was quite an experience, you may add. Years later, he left that band and started other bands that were more independent and self-funded, except this time he didn't have the support of a record label or a manager. Commercial airplay was almost non-existent, but at least, he had the internet to promote his band. It was a real reality check, having to take that DIY approach, compared to before. Because now he realised how inexperienced he was as an artist when it came to the industry side of things. I can tell you, he still plays music today. The shows are a lot smaller. It costs him money, but his creative passion is definitely still there. And every now and then he may get a random message from an excited fan somewhere in the world wanting his band to play in their hometown. If only they really knew what was going on. He's never changed. He's still the same creative musician that wrote and recorded that double platinum several years ago. But what has changed is the environment, the music environment, the industry, and the support that he has access to. I tell you that because that 12-year-old kid is me. And the arts have had a huge impact on my life. And in case you're curious, that band I was referring to was a rock band called Tadpole several years ago. Okay? Now, I tell you that story because I want...
you.
Yeah. Now, I tell you that...
Lawrenceville.
I tell you that story because I want to highlight, what can happen when our artistic talent has the right environment and the support to grow. And I also wanted to highlight what happens when, and how challenging it is when that artist doesn't have access to that support. So, two areas that I think, and this is my personal thoughts, we need to focus on are around artist development and around audience development. And this is one of those things where everyone needs to kind of play their part to help make this happen. There is certainly no shortage of amazing talent in this country. You've all seen it. I mean, I've seen it as well when I get out and about. But what there does seem to be a shortage of is that pathway to help take a person from here to here. We also all have a responsibility to cultivate our audiences in our respective art sectors. Okay? So when we do have these new artists coming through, and we do find that way to take them from here to here, then there's also an audience that will recognise them and appreciate them. Okay? So for me personally, as an example, I'd like to see even more Kiwi music on the airwaves. If alternative radio can achieve 40% content, why can't our commercial radio stations do the same? Like I said earlier, I don't have all the answers, but I see these as important areas that we should focus on and look to tackle. Because ideally it's not about the social outcomes and the social benefits, as I think Jacinda was saying. It's about improving the economic benefits and outcomes as well. So, as someone from the Internet Party, I would also ask the question, are we making the most of technology in the arts? We know that a smartphone can take photos. It's a pathway to photography. It can also take videos, and it's a pathway to filmmaking. So, software like GarageBand, it reduces the barrier to composing and recording music. Social media and mobile apps, they can improve the way that we connect with our respective audiences. There are platforms already out there like Kickstarter that can help artists crowdfund projects, if they already have some kind of following. I would also ask, are we making the most out of enhancing our multiculture, both within this country and internationally? It is truly unique, and it is a major point of difference on the world stage. Should we be maximising it to its fullest potential? Are we helping to build an active culture of sharing, remix, and reuse? So, let's try shifting the conversation about what we can't do to what we can do. So, in the short term, things like using Creative Commons licenses can enable us to do this with a need to look at copyright down the track. And just so you know, the Internet Party, we agree with what Jacinda's saying. We think copyright needs a first principles review to take a look at it further. Because it's about protecting the rights of the artist, but also allowing that artistic innovation to occur. Could we make publicly funded copyright works available under an open license after a period of time so that our greater communities have the ability to innovate from them? How this would work, we provide a window for the works where they could be commercialised while ensuring that those older, no longer commercially available works were able to then be shared and reused by our communities, effectively giving publicly funded culture a second life. Could we develop the idea of a museum of broadcasters, stage and screen, and New Zealand music that has a Hall of Fame, you know, to recognise our past and present greats, their works and their achievements. You know, we need to remember those that came before us so that their inspiration can continue to move us forward. Creating an attraction like that would, you know, it would garner international acclaim, I think, as well as increase our tourism.
Promise Kim.com won't be in it, ever. I've heard that album.
You know, and
Good times.
one last thing that I'd also like to bring up, and it's been talked about already, is an economy. Arts is affected by an economy. At the Internet Party, look, we'd like to diversify and grow a strong digital economy. The tech sector is the third biggest sector already, but it's just a blip on what could potentially happen. And the reason I say that is because if we did have that strong digital future, it would create flow-on effects that would spill over into the arts. You know, there would be more money to enable investment and growth opportunities in arts culture as well. So those are just some of the ideas that we've put up for discussion. Definitely be interested in hearing what you think. We're all about collaboration. That's, you know, I definitely want you to know about that. I would like to see an increased investment in the arts. We just need to identify, you know, where are those opportunities that would make a significant difference, you know. We've already heard, you know, is it at the grassroots level, that school level, where you spark interest right in people when they're very young? Is it enabling more art creation through strengthening various funding schemes? Is it about strengthening the infrastructure and support so we can get better artist development taking place? Do we need to invest in further expertise so we can learn to grow our respective audiences themselves and learn how we can maximise our creative opportunities overseas? That's pretty much all I've got to share with you. So, you know, I would certainly love to hear your thoughts on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Young from the Internet Party. Now, we do have a speaker from the Māori Party in the audience, and Kendall has, the traffic got the better of her, I understand. But there is someone coming down, I believe. Do you want to find a light? And oh, yeah.
Yes, I am Anne Kendall. I'm standing in for the Māori Party today and to talk to you. Apologies from Anne, she has been stuck in traffic, and so between 2 Williams and myself we decided we'd toss the coin and I won. So for the next few minutes I'm just going to, you know, present Māori Party's case on behalf of Anne Kendall and Māori Party. First off, who am I? Well, my name is Hanurewa Taho, and I'm currently the chair of the Matariki Festival for the Auckland region. And I would like to acknowledge our fellow colleagues over here, Paul Goldsmith, Rick Lickinger, Jacinda, and I'm sorry, I don't know. Chris. Kia ora, Chris. First off, what can I say? Well, this. For the Māori Party, the role that we play and have played alongside National Party, for many have probably seen that as a weird combination, but I can say this, if you want to effect change, then you need to be at the top table. And the Māori Party have known that from the inception, from the time the Tariana walked across that floor and made the decision that we needed more, Māori needed more within the role that we play within a bicultural framework. So first, that's the most important thing. When it comes to kauatanga and what that means as far as governing and self-determination, then the arts and culture sector is a huge part for us, because from a public policy framework, that's how we operate. You know, you can't, arts and culture goes hand in hand with environment, it goes hand in hand with technology, it goes hand in hand with the social issues we have, because as we have seen in Christchurch, what happens out of adversity rises an arts voice, have we not? Yeah? Rises an arts voice. So that within that, the social and technological issues for Māori are endemic to us, because we understand what their challenges are as a people and how that impacts on others. So even though it may seem to you at times that we may be too, what I call tūturu Māori, and perhaps we may not think about you, in fact, we need to take care of what's happening in our own back door first before we can focus on you. And arts and culture policy is one area where, as a people, we can all work together and integrally. That makes sense, doesn't it? Now, some of you may be sitting there and saying, well, that sounds really a bit all wishy-washy. And some of you may be saying, well, you know, that sounds all very clear in principle, but how does that actually work? Well, you have to look at the history of the Māori Party over the last 2 decades, over the last 2 terms, to see what we have achieved. And it has been momentous. It has not been easy for our leaders sitting at that top table with the national government, but there has been mutual respect and understanding between the two parties to enable us to do what we need to do to get progress within this country. The Māori Party works on a principle of kanohi ki te kanohi, which means face-to-face discussion, which is what we're doing here today. You're hearing a series of points of views around a particular sector that is very important to all of us. But when you think about those principles, and I think about them, and some of you may know them, some of you may not, for me it's very simple. You sit at that table and you keep on discussing until you've got the best possible outcome. Ne? Yeah, best possible outcome. And for the Māori Party, I congratulate them for Tariana Turie, for Peter Sharples, Turiro Flavel, and for the others who sit there in the backbone who have been prepared to have those hard conversations. And that's what they continue to do. And perhaps that's what we don't hear, what you don't get to hear. I get to hear it because I have, like my whanaunga over here, Tu Williams, who keeps me informed. And also, too, I have a National Party background. In fact, which is, you know, which is good. I have an 18-year-old, well, 19-year-old actually, who's about to make her first spot. She put up on Facebook the other day, just to digress, because that's what you do, is that she liked the internet party. And I put up on Facebook, I went, really? Is that really what you kind of do? She said, why not? And I said, you must be very unwell. Sorry. But the reason for that is because, for me currently, and I'm going to be very blatant, I actually like the combination that we have at the moment with National and with the Māori Party where we sit, because being at the top table, we get outcomes. So there we go, I've done a bit of digression. So I'm just going to go to technology, because technology is really important in our day and age. I'm going to go to our wonderful Māori Party organisation website, and I'm going to read you a few things, because to me that seems it's better than me spouting forth, isn't it, if I just give you a few sort of clear ideas around how important culture and heritage is. But first, before I get there, I just want to talk about broadcasting and spectrum. Broadcasting is important to us because it's about our stories, and how many of us have a story to tell. We all have our story, and in tikanga process, it's about your story and my story and how we interconnect. It's about what we know, and it's about what we share, and how we come together to share those stories. For broadcasting and spectrum, Māori Party will maintain the current level of funding to Māngai Paho and Māori television. How many of you watch Māori television? It's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah. Getting better every time. We require broadcasters to increase Māori content in peak times, increase programming that aims to educate our nation, and all broadcasters on national broadcasting to be Māori language proficient. Now, you watch more Māori broadcasting. Why? Because the content is good. It's not just about us, it's about all of us. We will develop rangatahi Māori radio programming. You know, one of the things I like about Māori television is that there's a good cross-section of all of us who are working there. Yeah, and you get some, because of that, we get a really rich content of our tapestry of life here with the new Aotearoa. And that's going out across the world. Something that we don't see enough with TVNZ, you know, with TVNZ or TV3. We seek recognition that the spectrum is a taonga, and that we will negotiate 33% of 4G spectrum and future allocations for Māori. Now, I sit on the Ngā Puaia for the National Māori Broadband Advisory Group, which is currently looking at the research and uptake around Māori broadband to Māori households and to marae. We've just released our first bit of research. You know, one of the nicest things, well, not nicest, but one of the things I enjoyed the most about that research is how much our people are actually using it for entertainment purposes. You know, we're using it for TVNZ on demand, we're using it for music, we're using it for those areas. There's still a gap there in the market, but it suggests that entertainment is really important to us. Now, entertainment is not just in the music field, but for Māori, that's quite high. When we talk about business, business success has a key role in generating desirable social impacts and community wealth and well-being. We will support ethical business by placing value on longer-term business thinking, including shareholders, increase the volume embedded by design programs, New Zealand Trade Enterprise, available for iwi and Māori to access. Now, you know, when you think about Better by Design, what they're doing and achieving for business and for export, that's important. You need a party that actually can support that, yeah? Who understands that design thinking, that design-led thinking, because it means we're thinking into our programs, we're working on the programs rather than just being in it.
It started under the Labor government.
Probably did start under the Labor government, but can I tell you, National finishes it off.
Very well versed.
National finishes it off. Labor may start it, National finishes it off. National makes sure they do it, and guess what? The Māori Party have picked up that token and continue to do that.
Everyone should.
Ka pai, yes, we should. So you remember that thought, everyone should do it. It's not just all of us. All of us up here as parties, we have our policies, but each one of us has a particular thing that we're particularly good in delivering. National knows how to govern, Māori know how to deliver. So, finally, is that me? One more minute? I can do this. Cultural heritage. So when you come to cultural heritage, cultural tourism strikes a balance between the economic benefits and protecting people, culture and landscapes. Now that's what culture and heritage means for me. I'm sure it means similar to you. So, that Māori Party will establish Peace Week from the 31st of October to 5 November to honour the heroism and the peacemaking heritage established at Parihaka, a very vital piece of history for us. We will reintroduce a private members' bill to give official endorsement to Matariki and Puanga events. Who are Te Matariki? I love Matariki, don't you? Yeah. Very good festival. We will seek sustainable funding and support for Māori culture events, performing arts and tourism, opportunities to showcase Māori to the world. And currently we have an arts and culture policy framework that's happening currently. All of us have our opinion around that. One of the things, even though that I'm still looking for, is around culture policy. And perhaps that's a challenge we can send out to our parties there. What does the culture policy framework look for arts and culture within local government? Yep. And finally, digital technology. There's a digital renaissance that Māori can and should take a lead role in ensuring current and future generations have access to digital content and supporting technologies. Now, when you hear things like that, Māori, we can put you and us together on it, because today digital technologies plays a very important component in all of our lives into the future. So we're not alone and isolated. Māori Party understand that. So thank you to listening to me. Thank you for listening to Anne Kendall on Māori Party. I'm very proud to have stood up here to be able to have this kōrero with you as an arts practitioner and deliver and a businesswoman. Your vote matters, so really think about it. So if any of you are on the Māori roll in here, good, just vote for us, okay? Kia ora.
Now, I've written down a long list of issues that have been raised this morning, and I'm not going to read it out because you probably remember them all yourselves anyway. It is now time for questions from the floor. Now, if you have a position that you would like to introduce yourself from, if you're Anne O'Brien, say, and you run the really splendid Auckland Writers' Festival, you might like to say that because it tells the people where the question's coming from. But if you don't, that's all cool as well. So, just up to you. So, questions. We have one right here. Michael.
I'm Michael Smythe, industrial designer, author of the book New Zealand by Design. So I'm interested in the creative industries end of the spectrum, which is not the arts spokesperson's role, but I'm interested in that first issue that Paul brought up, which was suggesting that the arts is something we can afford when the economy's going well, and we've got to get the economy up and then we can all go and spend on the arts. Versus what Jacinta said, which was that the arts is a generator of wealth and creates the confidence to go out into the world and speak with our voice and be ourselves in the face of globalised dominance from America and more older cultures. So I'd like to hear more from each of the candidates about how a creative sector can generate wealth from the ground up.
Well, I'll just say initially, I mean, it's not either or. I wasn't suggesting for a moment that the point I was making was that the arts are a huge industry in New Zealand, and they're growing and they're doing well. But also, like every other industry, they prosper when the country as a whole is prospering. And so it's, both parts of the equation are important. And I do think it's, governments, the art sector it's complex. A lot of it hasn't got anything to do with government, and a lot has. I mean, my day started off with an argument with my 13-year-old son over doing his piano practice. And that happens in every household around the country in various ways and shapes and forms as parents try to encourage their children to be involved in the broader sense of the word in the arts. And government's role in that is simply one about trying to show respect and enthusiasm and appreciation for the arts in the broader sense of the word, and having a complex message about the New Zealand economy. It's not just one about it's important that we do well in the things that we've traditionally done well in agriculture and so forth, but just let's not forget that the creative sector in the broader sense of the word is very important to New Zealand culturally and economically, and that's why it's important that we do that well.
There's so much that could be said under that broad heading. I grew up with a ukulele. I, for some reason, just wanted to say that instead. Not everyone has a piano in their home. I think that the question's a good one. I wanted to tautoko what the Green Party candidate, though, said, that we should care about the economic position of our audiences, though. Actually, if we are ensuring that we are driving towards a high-wage economy and that we don't have communities living in squalor and on very low wages, yes, of course, that does have a flow-on effect to any sector that relies on audience. So that I absolutely agree with. But I also think that we need to just change the frame in which we view the sector. As I said, we absolutely will always hold to the point that the arts are not a nice to have. They are absolutely critical to our cultural well-being, but adding that extra layer of starting to embed them within our economic development plans. And so that means not just saying if we want a regional growth, which we've really focused on in the Labour Party at the moment, how do we grow jobs in our regions? That shouldn't just be about forestry and accelerated depreciation so that we build more timber processing plants. We should be building within that how we can build on our cultural, our heritage and our creative arts sector at that individual level as well. Let's bring it all in together. An example of what we might do there is, yes, the Regional Museum Fund has continued. It was meant to grow. It hasn't grown under this government, so we want to make sure we reinvest back into that. But there will come a time when actually that will may potentially be exhausted. There might then be a call for it, and we believe we should then diversify at a regional level the kind of infrastructure that fund can go into, to dance, to theatre, to our visual arts. And so saying again that there's room there to, at a regional level, build up our infrastructure and take an economic development approach at a local community level.
Anyone else? Comment?
Make furniture.
Rick.
Yeah. Swamp Cowrie.
Stop me when I go too far, because I get really excited when people talk about design.
Brief answers, please.
Really fast. What we really need to do in New Zealand is diversify. We have become a commodity-driven economy, and manufacturing has collapsed in this country. No, it has. Manufacturing jobs have disappeared. However, the way to bring them back is to start with design. Absolutely start with design. We can have a smarter economy. And somebody earlier mentioned, I don't remember who it was, the gaming sector. It is growing gangbusters. All the visual effects industries. These are all high-tech, reasonably high wage, and also very lightweight, easy to export industries.
And they're growing.
And they are growing, but barely. You know what I mean? The point is let's invest in them. Let's not keep investing in more dairy. We've kind of hit our saturation point there. Let's diversify our economy.
The last thing they need is the Greens interfering. They're growing nicely as they are.
They're growing in spite of you, not
Yeah, they're growing in
because of you.
thank you, Jacinda. They are. They're growing in spite of National Party policies.
Thank goodness Russell Norman's here to save us.
The rockstar economy is going to be found auto-asphyxiated in a hotel room with a line of milk powder in front of it.
Is there anyone else who'd like to add to
And I'll leave that.
Chris?
I'd just like to ask, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the rockstar economy. Can anyone here put up their hand and say that this rockstar economy has made a major difference to what you guys do? Can anyone put your hand up? This is an evidence-based approach right here.
Say it again? I didn't quite catch that.
I'd just like to know who here feels that they've benefited from the rockstar economy that we're talking about right now. If you can put up your hand and show, yes, this economy has really helped what I do, please put your hand up.
Who has a job?
Okay, nobody put that. Well, there's one at the end. Henariwa.
Well, I think every economy helps us in some particular way. It's a question of what it is that you want helped in. I mean, first and simple one is, do we have a job? Do you guys have a job up there? Then the economy's helped you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
They're all roadies, though.
Next question.
No, but look, you come on. You've got to take a really basic principle and say, and you may scoff at it, but at the end of the day, if our economy wasn't doing something for us, none of us would have a job. That's reality. We'd be like a Detroit, aspect where, after the Ford fallout, when I was at it, 40 years on, they still don't have enough jobs in that. They've still got, really below the line poverty. For me, that's the basic thing. So as long as you've got a job and you're putting food on the table, that comes down to you, but it also comes down to our social welfare system, and it comes down to us as to how we view the economy. So you may shake your head, but that's how I view the economy.
Thank you. Another question, right in the middle there. It's you, yes. Oh, Janet.
Good. I'm Janet McAllister. I write an arts column for The Herald. We've heard a lot about the design and industry side. I'd like to hear a bit about the cultural wellbeing side, or the part of the sector that isn't about generating money necessarily, which possibly government needs to step up because nobody else is going to fund it necessarily. Or what do you see as the cultural wellbeing goals of art, particularly state-funded art, and where does tangata whenua fit into this? Because we didn't hear very much about that from the first four.
In a sentence each. Or two.
Yeah, and perhaps you're absolutely right. I mean, I guess what I was saying is that has always been a given for us. It's absolutely fundamental that the state does have a role to play in supporting our creative sector, because that's actually how ultimately we tell our stories. We just want to add an extra layer to that. But that is why we are going to inject additional funding in, whether we've said explicitly it'll go in through creative apprenticeships, through artists in schools, back through supporting PACE, growing our museum fund, etc. So we are putting that additional funding in there. But when it comes to telling our stories, I think we have to accept that, that we can't commercialise that. And that is why, for instance, bringing back a genuine public broadcaster is absolutely critical. TVNZ, even under the Charter, had lost that role a long time ago. And so we need to reinstate that and be really open about the fact that if we want to tell our stories, that's how it has to happen. In terms of Māori and Pacifica, we've got specific sections within our policy. I'm going to get dinged, but making sure that there's lead representation at the highest levels of Creative New Zealand and Arts Council. We saw it diminished, and we want to reinstate that. We need that leadership role and that voice to be at the highest level.
Anyone else?
Oh, well, just there's a bit of a myth that we talk about the four well-beings in local government, and cultural well-being is one of them, and they were removed from the local government legislation. And people, they were introduced in 2002 by the Labor government. It's not as if there was no arts policy in local government before 2002 when the four well-beings appeared. There were libraries, there were art galleries, there were everything like that. And so the infrastructure of the arts is central to what makes a great city and a great nation. And so absolutely the broader contribution of the arts is to a sophisticated and a society, and everybody, I'm sure, right across every party, supports that and recognises the importance of it. And when we come to times of difficulty as a country, when we say we're commemorating the First World War over the next couple of years, the role of the arts is central to that and central to our understanding as a country. And so, you know, there's broad support for that across all parties.
I would say very briefly that, to summarize it, we have to back ourselves. We have to back ourselves with pennies, because pretending that the make-believe free hand of the market is going to take care of all this is lying to ourselves. It doesn't work that way. If it wasn't necessary to have cultural well-being put into the Act, why did the Labour government do it? Why was there so much overwhelming support around the country in 2002 when that went in? I mean, it made so much sense. We supported it, I mean, for obvious reasons, and we fought hard to keep it in, and we'll put it back. The one aspect I missed in my earlier speech was about reach. I'm agreeing with Chris, we need to build audiences, and part of that is through accessible facilities at the local level, gallery space, things like that that are not impossible to get into, either from a financial hurdle or just an availability hurdle. Because we got to build our audience, and we've got to get our craft out there into the public sphere, whether it's through TVNZ7 or the public broadcaster or your local gallery.
Could I just pick up on one thing very quickly? You mentioned backing ourselves. Well, I find that hard to reconcile with the kind of protectionist, isolationist, don't have any free trade agreement kind of view that the Greens have.
Only fair trade is what we want. Fair trade.
No, but I think the greatest danger for New Zealand as a society is introspection. We're out here, we're in the middle of the ocean, we look, it's us versus them, it's who was here, who was there, and you know, I think my vision for this country and where I want to be is a place that's open, confident, outward looking, and prepared to engage with the world, and that's what we do. We can foot it with the best in the world, and do well, and that to my view is backing yourselves, not sort of looking in introspectively all the time.
All and well good if we don't sell out, and that's the problem with the current paradigm.
Well, that's just fair talking.
So in that case, what's in the TPPA?
Eh? Well, New Zealand is a trading nation. Our whole livelihood depends on trading with the world, and we do it brilliantly. And in the last 6 or 8 years, or 6 years since the Labour government did the free trade agreement with China, we've gone from a situation where we were exporting $2 billion a year to China to $14 billion a year, and that sustains our economy. It's a great thing.
I'm going to pull it right back to the arts now. Another question.
Tuanahira Higgins tōku ingoa, he kai hautu Māori mo te kaunihira o Tāmaki Makaurau. I'm the Māori program for arts and culture at Auckland Council. And so our most recent thing that we did was Matariki, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. My question is around arts and culture. As you've all pointed out, is a really, really important part. And I'm probably going to throw the cat among the pigeons here. When is our government going to be brave and go back to the kākano of arts and culture, which is language? And when is that going to be, as in the Māori language, going to be compulsory in our schools? Because when we go overseas, as you have all said, when we all go overseas, we all sing pōkarekare, we all do the haka, we all talk about our Māori identity. Yet we are not brave enough in our own country to put our own culture in our own schools. So how can you ask us to support the culture, and how can we support these governments who say that they're going to support our culture when they won't even support our language?
Anybody?
Shall I start on that one?
But, yes.
Yeah, kia ora, ngā koe. So, some of you may know that for Peter Sharples, one of his legacies that he wishes to leave behind for us is around te reo Māori and the Māori language and the Matawai proposal bill, which is in front of government at the moment. And that's quite significant because it means that the language may go back to iwi to look after, but it actually is all our responsibility as to how we deliver that policy, that program. So from Māori Party is that Te Reo Māori is an important aspect of who we are within an arts and culture framework. It's how our stories start, and it's how we whakapapa and our genealogy to this whenua and to those within this land. So the Māori Party are we support Te Reo Māori. If we don't, there's something wrong with us, but because that's a foundation principle of ours, it's a tohu of ours. And I'm actually very excited by the fact that we will have Matuai as a legacy document for the Māori Party moving forward. It comes down to, and I'm going to throw back to you, it's actually up to the rest of you, actually how you're going to pick up that tohu and how you're going to implement it with your everyday lives. Because it doesn't just come down to Māori to deliver the Māori language, it comes down to every one of us. They say that by the year 2020, that every person, well, not every person, but every New Zealand-born person may have 1% Māori within them, a drop of Māori blood. So if we have a drop of Māori blood in us, then the question goes back, what will be your responsibility to Te Reo Māori language and ensuring it stays alive within our country, ongoing for future generations? And that's what the Māori Party wish to ensure.
The question is, when will it be compulsory?
Well, compulsory, once again, this is the first step, isn't it? This is the first step towards ensuring the language actually is not just recognised. So the next step then is to make sure that the national government in Hikia Parata doesn't say that it's not compulsory. So let's hope the Māori Party are able to get to the top table, because that will be the next step for the Māori Party to make sure that it actually is compulsory. Because if we can make it compulsory at primary, then we can make it compulsory right through all areas. Ne?
Among the other parties, do any of you have a policy to make it compulsory at primary level?
No, we don't. But I think people should have a choice. I've got kids in the primary section, they all learn Māori, but it's not, it's how far you go, and I think people should have a choice as they get older.
In my maiden speech in Parliament, I reflected on how it was one of my great regrets that at school I learnt Japanese. And I feel shame that that I'm not better versed in one of our official languages. We've committed to making Te Reo a working language. That's as it should be. That means that we want it to be able to be used within our schooling system, within our public sector, and that means actually thinking more broadly than just what happens at education. We haven't said that we would make it compulsory, but we certainly want it integrated more firmly into our education system. And that means making sure that we've got enough teachers to teach Te Reo. That's an ongoing issue, and something we've got to make sure that we're really targeting some of our scholarship programs around ensuring that happens. But I hope that my children will be fluent. That's at least a hope that I have.
Now
if I have them.
A few steps to go through first.
Just to add to that very quickly, we fell short of compulsory use within schools. What we did commit to in our education policy, and I'm reaching here, I didn't brush up on it, is ensuring that all our teachers have bilingual education, actually making that a core part of the teaching curriculum, so that as teachers go in, it just becomes part of the...
Even the maths teachers?
And why not? Why not? Everybody. That's right.
Do you know what? It makes you smarter.
I was just going to say, it is a fact that bilingual students are far more successful, particularly when they start young, than monolingual students. Yep. So let's do it. It's good for us.
Chris?
Well, I'll just add, look, Internet Mana would like to see it part of the core school curriculum as well. Not compulsory at this stage, but that's always up for discussion, as I said, the way when we deal with things. And just to add, we'd like to see a plan to grow the number of teachers that can teach it in schools as well.
Right, we are running out of time, but I'm going to take one more question. There was one down the front here. Yes, you? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my name's Craig Runapere and I write for Public Address. I'm very glad to hear that there is a bipartisan agreement that grant form filling in shouldn't be the biggest growth sector in the arts. But I would like to, and I'm sure everyone here has complained about it for decades, but what is one concrete thing that does not require years of consultation that you would actually do to reduce that burden on the arts sector? Ooh, concrete detail.
Few reforms. Less red tape.
Well, you know, the only way to fix it is to go through a first principle review with you guys about what bits of it aren't working, and we've absolutely committed to that. We've said we are going to review that process and would need the assistance of the sector to make sure we got that right, because I absolutely stand by it. It's got to be about funding high-quality projects, not high-quality grant applications.
Yep, I'd agree with that totally, and just add that there's a lot of stakeholders that have to come to the table, not just ministries, but partially and wholly government-funded agencies, New Zealand Film Commission, Te Papa, the libraries, the galleries, etc., and all the NGOs that are out there that are getting government funding. They all need to come to that table to cut that red tape.
But I have a hard drive full of PDFs of discussion documents and papers where people have laid this all out. And I don't mean to criticise you guys, but it seems often that arts policy is a lot of well-intentioned, you know, we are going to talk to you, but there's no use consulting if these consultation papers are going to end up propping up a coffee table. So that's just for my own entertainment why I'm asking for something concrete and practical.
And I totally accept that any time you use the word review, it doesn't sound concrete and practical. My entire job when I worked in the UK, I used to work for something called the Better Regulation Executive. If you ever want to put anyone to sleep, take a job in that department. But my whole job was about trying to look at the world through the eyes of the people who are having to respond to regulation, grant filling, and all of that, I guess, flow on from government thinking that they're doing the right thing. What I learned from that is that we start from your end instead of starting from our end. And so we're absolutely committed to doing it. Review doesn't sound great, but it's the only way we're going to be able to fix it. But you have to be a critical part of that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is, I think the national government over the last 6 years has been, been very good around financial discipline and all that. Perhaps an area where we haven't been where we can still do a lot better is around the regulatory side of life, and not just in the arts, but I mean, this is the same as if you're trying to build a house or get an extension on the house. Form filling is rampant everywhere, and so trying to be more effective and more disciplined around regulations and that broader sense of the economy, I think, is the next challenge for us. The other thing I'd just say before we go is, anybody in the arts, in an orchestra or play knows that things work well when you're unified and everybody's playing the same piece. And that's been a great part of the success for the last 6 years of this government. We've been unified, focused, we know where we're going, and we're all singing from the same song sheet, in partnership with the Māori Party and ACT and so forth. And that's the choice we've got in September. Stick with a unified group who know where they're going, or head off in this this great combination here.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now,
at least it's coherent.
We, in our arts, as practitioners, we have to collaborate all the time to do our work. That's how we actually do our work. So I think your notion of us being insular is wholly wrong. I think national is quite insular. I think you guys could do well to collaborate a bit better. I mean, I think in the last year, 3 young women have probably raised the profile of this country more so than our milk products. We've got, Eleanor Catton, we've got Lord out there, Lydia Coe. Maybe take the money from the yachting and stick that into our arts and culture, because we're the ones who are actually waving the flag for Brand New Zealand, and we're doing it collaboratively.
Absolutely. Just say, but I wasn't saying for a moment that we are blaming the arts sector for being insular. I'm suggesting that New Zealand as a whole has a tendency towards introspection, and we should always continue to resist that.
Now, we are...
That's my view.
Right. We are out of time. You can grab Paul on his way down the stairs. I just wanted to make a couple of comments in summing up, because I think what we've heard today is I've been impressed at the level of the presentations right along the table. One of the things that surprised me, I guess, is that we didn't hear very much around specific policies, and I do think that's a good thing. We didn't hear about whether there should be the Auckland Art Gallery should have a changed relationship with the council and or the government and or Te Papa. We didn't hear specifically about whether the Creative New Zealand's putting too much or not enough into sending artists to the Edinburgh Festival. We certainly didn't hear very much about the relationship between the funding for the APO and the NZSO, a very hot topic in this town.
I can speak to that.
Now, you could. The point I wanted to make, though, is that the reason I'm pretty pleased about that is that the people here have, by and large, resisted the temptation to view their roles as politicians as making down at the bottom specific decisions. Those are the decisions that need to be made after a lot of consultation. They need to be made by the sector themselves a lot of the time. They need to be sector driven. They don't need to have politicians coming in saying, I can get votes if I promise this. And in the arts, it strikes me, rather more than in many other areas of our social and economic life, I think that does appear to be relatively well understood. There's not so much meddling, if you like. I think that's a good thing. So as I said, I'm impressed with a lot of what we've heard today, and I hope you are too. I hope you found it edifying and a little bit entertaining, and I hope it will help with your voting. Thank you.